Well, hi everybody. It's us again, and guess what? It's Friday. It's coffee and chat. So I've got my coffee. I haven't even checked in with Lucy if she's got one, but she has.
Got it.
Mine
Got
actually,
it. Got it here.
mine actually is empty. The only mug I could find that wasn't in the washing machine. Talk about first world problems. Is about 100 years old from my son. So he's now 24. So,
Kath, why hasn't he made you a cup of coffee?
first world problems. Um, really great to see you all. I just thought I'd introduce the panelists that we're talking to today. So we've got three panelists, one that's desperately trying to get into the system, so he might join us at some stage. So if another face appears, then you know why. But with us today is Lucy Finney and Nicole. Nicole works with me on a routine basis, in fact works next to me all the time, but Lucy and I have known each other an insane amount of time. So we've known each other since the late 80s and have worked together more recently on quite a large project which will lead to quite a large change. So one of the things that the thing that we're really here to talk about today is change management, and particularly the individual and change, and what impacts change has on the individual. I was up in the office today and it was quite noticeable that there were very few people around in the other offices near us, and people are still quite nervous about this whole change thing. And before we started, the three of us were really just talking about, are you finding it a challenge? So what are you finding, Lucy? Is it a challenge with regards to, on you personally? Is it a challenge on what you're finding going on? Is it different?
Yeah, I would say it really is. Things have really changed in terms of how I do my work now. So really, when lockdown happened, we literally the whole company, we're just a small company with 7 employees, but we used to do a lot of change management programs, change management workshops, and the workshops were out on customer sites. And the whole value of the workshop was to be able to do things face to face. The training, a lot of the training we did was, so I work on a lot of leadership management development training, and that was on site too. And that, that was it really valuable to be face to face. All of that went overnight. So we had to rapidly learn how to use online platforms. And I think I've been in training for years, you know that, don't you, Kath? And with the online thing has been around, but really everybody's kind of talked of it in terms of e-learning and doing those kind of things. What I've just found suddenly, and for me, it's about the virtual learning platform, the whole engagement of people online, and getting them to two-way communicate as a trainer, trying to get them to talk to us, especially in that emotional kind of development field, has been really challenging. But we're getting there. We've learned the platforms, we're getting the technology out of the way, so now we're getting much more into the sort of rich discussions, which to be honest with you, I'm beginning to love. And it's a whole new way of working, completely new way of working.
And quite tiring, I think, don't you?
Oh yeah, for long days, as we were saying before we came online. Because one of the things that's come out of all of this is I was due to do an awful lot of travel before this. I was supposed to be going all the way around, Europe and delivering a lot of training. But those clients decided to come back and ask us to do it differently. And actually, we've ended up doing a lot of training internationally through the virtual platform. So I've been training, Italians sitting there, they're in their pajamas still. I've been talking to people who've been looking out on Mount Etna while I've been talking to them. I've heard about, Milan and Grenoble and all sorts of places, and it's been fascinating to be in little subgroups as I've gone through. Very, very different for me, but long days, because I'm literally start training early in the morning and I'm ending up at the end of the night still wrapping up on the other side of the world. So that's
How about you, Nicole? What's been your experience? And does it feel weird?
I think everyone's taken a little bit of time to get used to it, and I've seen it across the board, both with clients and people I'm talking with and other people within the business, that it is that just getting used to having children popping into the background or other bits coming and going. But I've seen some really positive changes and people being really quite enthusiastic and grasping it. And I think the really important thing is we've all become a lot more comfortable about having our cameras on. and that's almost opened that window into people's lives, so you can start to connect on a very different level than you were before. So I think that's been really positive, and I've done quite a bit of work with the NHS recently, and I'm just seeing how they've almost had to kind of just go with it. So as opposed to having, you know, all the real resistance to change, which they've been quite a traditional organisation and quite slow to make those changes, I think they've really surprised themselves with what they can achieve because they've had to, with that sort of camaraderie. And they've seen a lot of people kind of step into role and achieve, you know, not the natural leaders necessarily. So I think it's been really exciting, you know, seeing
So we're
the
seeing,
positives
so
that come out.
is it sort of innovation? Is that what you think you're seeing? Is it lots of different types of innovation, or is it just enthusiasm? Or
I think some of it's innovation, but I think they're so used to having to deal with the resistance to anything, and everything's always, they've got to justify everything so many times over because everybody's looking at budget, and they're quite a nervous organisation. I think because a lot of that has just been swept out of the way because they've had no choice. They've actually found themselves being able to achieve so much more in such a small amount of time. And there are so, I mean, I've been chatting, you know, I was chatting to an individual last week and just setting up a mental health hotline 24/7. It took them a week, and it was something which they thought would take about 18 months. And so on that front, they're feeling really good about it.
Yeah, so you both described something that actually is about speed as well. I mean, you know, I'm working with one of the universities, and they literally in 2 week a 2 week period managed to get every single one of their courses being delivered virtually. And I know that their vice chancellor had been trying to do that for years, and you know, kept getting all these blocks. So the blocks have been taken out of the way, and that's got to be a positive. So I think for some, they've really, really embraced it. But are you seeing the opposite at all? Are you hearing anybody that's really struggling with it?
I think one of the things I was going to say, just to build on some of the stuff Nicole was saying, I do think some people have been struggling, and they're struggling because I think there's a lot of stress, a lot of external issues going on around them, and that's affected how they learn. They haven't been able to take on, you know, we'd run in the past a whole day workshop, and they would just come along and we could sustain them throughout the day. But with everything going on around them now, I found that just if we go beyond 60 minutes online or the stretch 90 minutes, people are struggling a bit. But what they have fed back to us is they're loving learning the way we're doing it. So they are loving getting an hour's snapshot here, 2 days later getting another hour, then another hour. So they have changed. They've embraced the way that they are learning. But I just to answer your question, as like Kathon, are they struggling? So I've been doing a lot of training on mental toughness, and I think in that, it's been revealed. A lot of people, interestingly, a lot of the women have actually said, "Well, I struggled, you know, sometimes with things like being assertive in meetings. I'm even struggling more now here. I'm getting onto a virtual platform, and I've got people that are just cutting me off and cutting me down." So I've been doing a lot of sort of coaching techniques to try and help people literally be more assertive in virtual meetings. But the women are coming across that whole thing. How do I get my profile? You know, how do I connect? But interesting, the men haven't worried so much about it. They've been more like, how do I control things, and how do I get people to see the same picture of what's going on around me? And that's all these things of control and managing work together with the life kind of stress things around. These are what are really, I think, people, you know, are affecting people in the background.
So to a certain extent, some of the things that you're talking about are gender specific or role specific, are they?
I think so, and it may be just the companies that I'm in. Some of them have already, interestingly, some of the guys have already been working remotely for years. But we've ended up discussing how that's different, and maybe if they're in a full environment with lots of men that they're working with, they have slightly different issues. But you see, of course, they don't see that as much. This is just my observation over the last sort of 10 weeks of training. I found the women that have come on to my webinars have been very, very passionate about understanding more about themselves, understanding about how they can develop something we talk about, which is beyond resilience. So that's bouncing back and getting stronger, how they can use their strengths to greater effect in the virtual way, and things like that. Whereas with a lot of the men I've been there with, as I say, it's been still don't talk so much about their fears online. So our mental toughness has been quite attractive, because I think the word toughness has attracted people into it.
Yeah. So
And
some of it is language, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah.
But Lucy, do you think it's because, I know that women might be reporting that they're struggling with it, but is it because men just aren't generally so good about exposing themselves, putting their hand up and saying, do you know what, some of the mental health issue is a problem for me as well, because they feel there's that bravado?
I do. So when we break through that and manage to get sort of a little under that, that's why the webinars I'm running have to go over a period of time. Then they start to open up more as you get that chance to have that rapport. Yeah, they do open up, and they get intrigued without saying it about how I do a lot of stuff now on how to get your focus right, how to control anxiety, how to get attentional control. These are all parts of mental toughness. They open up in those, and you finally start to uncover some of the issues that they're dealing with. So they do. I agree with you. They hide it more. They definitely don't express it as mental. Sorry, I was going to say they don't express it as mental. How do I put it? Maybe you know what I mean.
Yeah. So are you seeing different coping strategies, Nicole?
Amongst people coping with being at home? I think mostly it's about trying to, I'm certainly trying to teach when I'm on any form of training or speaking to people, is taking that little bit of time at the beginning of meetings to touch base. And it's certainly something we've been doing in the office with our own team, is just making sure that there is that quick meeting, quick stand up every morning, and having an opportunity to have a bit of informal chat as well. It doesn't have to be just straight business all the time, and taking time to ask, and it's almost acknowledging that it's okay not to be okay sometimes. And I think if everybody knows that there's an element of flux going on, we aren't all rosy every single day of the week. Naturally, when you come into the office, people have got other things going on in the background, but it's quite intense when you're all shut in and in lockdown. So
I think that's
getting outside.
Yeah,
I was going to
that's
mention
one of the things I found today. You know, I today going up to the office, and I haven't been in the office for some weeks. And you know, before I went, I was like, right, do I have everything? Do I have my hand sanitizers? Have I got my face mask? Do I have my computer? Do I have this? Do I have that? I forgot to take a pen. I've also, you know, how simple was that? I needed a pen. And then I'm in the office, I clean my desk down, and then I'm thinking, where's the pen? And then I'm thinking, how do I get my coffee? Because I haven't thought through what, you know, this process. How do I get a coffee? How do I do something really normal, like just go and get a coffee? Because it's another change, isn't it? I've got used to working at home. I know where everything is. You know, rightly or wrongly, I live in, you know, a large house, and I've got my own office. That's great. It must be much more difficult for individuals that are working in much smaller confines, you know, one room that they sleep in and they work in, and maybe they've got kids in. That must be really challenging. But for me, the simple change of just going to a different location, and yet I'm always, you know, I'm a peripatetic almost consultant. I'm often on the road. But I was really struggling this morning. Do I have everything? And then I got there, and you know, it seemed to take so much longer to get settled. Maybe that was just me, but have you found anything like that?
I think the people, that's what I mean by can be quite easily distracted. We're right out of our comfort zone, and although a lot of us have got a bit more comfortable with this, there's a load of additional things happen that distract us, and that makes us forget some of the basics. I think, I do find that. I think something I wanted to pick up a little bit on Nicole's point earlier. You said about people turning on their cameras. This is one of the biggest things, I think, for me as a sort of using my psychometrics, using my psychology, talking to people about the same things I talk about, is one of my biggest challenges. Sometimes people can't turn on their cameras because they don't got cameras enabled. I've even had people come into webinars who can't turn on their sound, so you're trying to teach while you're chatting down the sideline. Other people are trying to view on mobiles and things like this, so it's not all consistent. But the points that I've made is when people have managed, and I've coached them over 2 or 3 sessions, they finally turn the cameras on. They get the point of how much we lose by not seeing each other. And I think, you know, you were making that point, which is good. We get the cameras on and we touch base and we have this time. But actually, sometimes it takes quite a lot of coaching for people to turn on the cameras. And I've definitely found, and I'm sure it's because the hairdressers aren't working, people will say to me, I can't turn it on. You know, I'm not sure. And the men are really bad. I'm sorry, but they just won't. They won't turn it on. You know, but I think eventually we get there. But it's not always straightforward, and I find that gets in the way.
It's a building of trust, isn't it? You know, we always talk about trust in change and that building of trust. It's no different. I mean, all of the theory that we've been talking about for years in change, you know, communication, teamwork, consistency, trust, empathy to each other, that they're all there. It's just a complete, you know, this is a whole life change, not just a change program. And I think managers are going to have to consider that, because everybody's going to come back to this from a completely different angle. Friends of mine that got their children back in school this week have been absolutely petrified about it for the last couple of weeks. Now they've got their children in school a little bit more relaxed because they know the form, they know what process they're going through, how they're handing their children into school, etc. Now, you know, the touching base that Nicole just mentioned, you'd normally ask that sort of question, you'd know that that was happening, but you don't necessarily when you're not seeing each other regularly, I think. So it is that communication as well. It's a real challenge, I suspect, for managers. I don't know. What do you think, Nicole?
I think it's just really important to sort of have that human touch and try and put, you know, people and families first through all of this. And I think if you can listen and show that empathy and understanding, people are, you know, and a bit of flexibility, people are far more willing to find a way to make it work. So does it matter if somebody needs to take an hour out to go and do a bit of homeschooling with their children, or take them out around the park because they've got them in the house, and then come back and do that work later? As long as you can find, you know, mutual times when you can do that work, I just think you're going to get a lot more out of your teams if you can be people focused first.
There was an interesting point made on a webinar on Friday, that a firm of accountants is considering not having holiday in the future, and that all that they would be doing is setting output targets for their staff. And if they wanted to take 3 weeks, 4 weeks off, and they could either satisfy their output targets or they could share their output targets, then they said they think that will be okay in the future.
That's really interesting. I recognize the voice, Graham. That is an interesting concept. No, I haven't got your picture, but I can hear your voice. Yeah, I think that's a really interesting concept. A cousin of mine, actually, his company, he works in the betting industry, and they've done it for a long time. You can take holiday when you want to, and as long as you get everything achieved within the year, then that's absolutely fine. And they actually find that people don't take as much holiday as they should because they are very output focused. So, you know, it's working for them. Yeah, it's a really interesting one. So, Graham, in your coaching, are you finding the individuals and needing to change in a lot of different ways?
Well, there need to be. I'm trying to get I don't know why my video is not working. I'll try and have a look at that. They're not needing to change very much, because most of the coaching element is one-to-one. And a lot of the previous coaching that I've done has been over Skype. So this hasn't been a real sea change for anyone on one-to-one coaching.
No.
But I think whether there's a gender specific aspect to it or not, I'm not sure. There's definitely a familiarity aspect to it, because people that have been more familiar with working online have not had.
We've just lost you, Graham.
Good point was just about to be brought out there. Huh.
See, that's another of the.
I mean, I'm not sure where he was.
On tech, Lucy. It is that issue on tech.
Yes, on that tech, exactly. There he goes again. where was he? So the people, yeah, I mean, I've dealt with a group of people who have been working for years remotely, and this is a cultural aspect as well. And I find it really interesting, my discussions with them, because they came on a remote working series of webinars with me, and I was very curious. But at first they thought, oh no, nothing's changed. But as I took them through things and we started to talk about things, and they realized, actually, yes, things are different for them. They were tending to revert to type, so they were tending to keep going back to just the phone and not use the screens. But as we discussed the cultural element, as Italians these were, what have you lost? They said, well, we're really struggling, because we would do that social thing that Nicole mentioned. We would do so much in the past working remotely, but on a Friday we would meet at a cafe, and we'd have a cafe and a chat, and we can't do that. We're also, and this is they're very expressive, but we can't do all those things. So it's almost like what they have as their cultural norms and their rituals have been taken from them. So even though they're still working remotely, they believed they had lost some things, and they needed to do some things differently and be very careful about reverting just back to what they did before, because things have been taken away from them. So they need to alter to still have that relationship building online. And I thought that was really interesting. And they hadn't even thought, it's like Nicole said, they hadn't thought about sitting down with their groups and their teams literally over a coffee table like this and just doing a dial-in and not talking about work. They hadn't thought about any of that.
So it's these new norms, isn't it? It's a new way of working almost.
Yes. Yeah. Is that?
Oh, we had Graham back for a moment there.
Back. Yeah, I'm back. I think there was something that was interesting that came up the other day when I was working with a group, in that they pointed out that if we try to replicate the old norm in a virtual environment, we will probably get it wrong to an extent.
Yeah.
And what we need to do is to spend more time designing the session so that it doesn't try and immediately replicate what you used to do. A number of groups now I've been on a group that's had a social breakout halfway through a 1 hour session, and it allows people to have a chat one-to-one, go into breakout rooms that they want if you're using the other platform. And I think there is an element where we need to accommodate some of the things that we can never get online, like that one-to-one contact, but try and make it as good an experience as possible.
Yeah, Graham, just on that point, I read a really interesting Harvard Business Review article on this, on how remote working, and one of the things they said to really make your virtual meetings better, that you do actively think about creating a space for the water cooler moment, because the water cooler moment is where the most valuable conversations happen. So you need to break your sessions early, but allow people to have those discussions within it. And I've heard people saying they're doing that in their work sessions, and it's going really, really well. And just to build on Graham's comment, my thing has always been, you have to put more effort into these things online and think about them.
Far more. I agree with you. Yeah, there's a radio broadcaster who used to design his radio show by using a clock face, and he segments out the clock face so that he only allows a certain number of records in every hour, and then puts in breakouts in that clock face across the hour, which is a very canny way of planning, very pictorial. But it's a canny way of planning, and there's no reason why I can't do meeting agendas like that. Why does it have to be linear? Why can't it be far more cyclical than that? Quite an interesting concept. Well, talking of which, it's coming up to past, and the whole point of these is very informal, very organic, and only keep it to half an hour. So I'm going to wrap. I think we've covered quite a lot of things, some of which we've talked about before, but I think we are in an area where managers need to consider the individuals that they're actually working with and what this new norm is. I think we're going to go through a period of quite a lot of change over the next few months as we settle into whatever this new norm looks like. And I think that that will change over a period of time as well. I can't see that staying stationary. And I think we've talked about some of the challenges that people have got, that excitement for some, the innovation of some, and also the tiredness. And I think that's quite important as well, to acknowledge that some people are finding this really quite exhausting, and that some of them are in a very, very different position to others. And that's a challenge for most leaders. I wanted to finish by just highlighting what we're doing next week, because the chat next week, and Nicole and Lucy are aware of this, but I'm really excited about this. We're talking about informal learning, and we've got two people with us, Paul Matthews and Laura Overton, both big names in training and education. If you can join us, that would be absolutely great. It is only a half hour. We always keep it to a half hour. It grows organically. People can come in and join in if they want to, as Graham has today. Very happy to have more people join the chat, but it is literally just a coffee, there it is, and a chat. No more, no less. Really great to see you all. Thank you so much, Lucy, for your time. She's definitely got gin in there.
Kath, we've got a couple of people with unanswered questions very quickly. Do you think we should?
Yes.
I can see Mark, no. You've got your hand up, as it were. And we've got Louise Carver has as well. Are you still there? Do you want to ask anything?
I recognize some of these names. They're figuring how to unmute themselves.
They've gone all quiet. They're not even showing as muted.
Hello.
Oh, hello.
Hello. So,
yes.
Yeah, great conversation today. It's Mark Waterman here.
Hi, Mark.
Hi, Mark.
And I've just been firing off on all neutrons that I don't think we've got time to dive into. But I was thinking about the difference between a externally influenced change and something that's internally influenced, like an organization. And working from home, I can remember working in an organization that wanted to introduce smart working with more people working from home, and there was huge resistance to that. But with this enforced scenario, now people kind of have to go, and now they're almost fighting that they don't want to go back to the work office. So yeah, sorry, that was a question earlier on, but we are rapidly closing time. I think
sorry, Mark.
Really interesting. No, that's cool.
Great, really interesting. Well, let's pick up at that at some stage, Mark. Really great to see you all. As I said, we're going to get going because it's 1:30, and we promise always that this is only half an hour. Great to see you all, and hopefully catch up next week. Take care now.
Perfect. Thank you. Love to see you all.
Bye. Bye.
Bye.
Bye. There we go.
It's always remembering how to